Good afternoon. DLA Piper is internationally known for its corporate diversity program. We would like to share with you some of our tips for a successful diversity and inclusion program. For that, we have with us the Diversity and Inclusion Chief Officer of DLA Piper, Fenimore Fisher, and the Managing Partner of the DLA offices in Madrid, Mrs. Pilar Menor. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we begin, I received an emergency message. I was told that the individuals in the front here are very lonely. And so if any of you would like to come and join in the front, they would welcome that. So Pilar, you are the managing partner of DLA Piper in Spain. And as I understand it, that's not necessarily a market where you have a host of women leaders. Would you please share, basically, being a woman in your position, what this means in Spain, and also tell us a bit about your personal journey?
Well, my personal journey. I joined DLA back in 2006 as the head of the employment practice, and in 2012 I was promoted to managing partner. They announced me the promotion 2 weeks before my wedding, so I couldn't sleep for a couple of weeks. I don't know which of the two marriages took my sleep away from me, but so far both experiences have been great. I have now twins that are 4 years old, and from a professional perspective, DLA Piper in Madrid is consolidated as one of the key players in the market. So far, I have received a lot of support from DLA Piper, and I had the opportunity of developing this practice and this management experience that was great. When I was promoted, I was a quite unique or strange animal in my market because the typical profile of the managing partner was a more senior male with a corporate or finance practice. I was below 40 years old, female lawyers, and an employment lawyer, so that was very unusual. I want to show you a picture that reflects a little bit the situation in the legal industry in Spain. This picture was taken on the 9th of September. That is the opening of the judicial year this year. And as you may see, there is not a very diverse picture in terms of gender balance, at least. So this is what happens in the management positions in legal law firms. And I think as an organization, we need to lead by example in this field, and we do lead by example. We are recognized as ambassadors of diversity, and this is a very important part of our NDA.
In terms of gender diversity, what do you think are the challenges in the legal sector, and how is DLA directly addressing them?
Well, you have seen the picture. The picture reflects a little bit what is the situation. In Spain, female law students are around 58%. We have brilliant academic recognitions in law schools, in business schools, and female lawyers are very well represented in law firms at all levels, up to senior associates. But when it comes to becoming a partner or becoming a senior manager, the situation changed completely. I think the percentage in Spain is now below 20%, significantly below 20%. And so what is the reason for this lack of balance, this lack of proposal? What is happening with this talent that doesn't reach to the top? I think there are a number of factors. First of all, the nature of the legal work. We have deadlines. We work for our clients, and if you look at these surveys of client satisfaction, one of the things that they appreciate more in their lawyers is accessibility, quick replay. So this, on the one hand, may create stress, and the auto-exclusion of some female lawyers may think this is not made for me, I don't want to be a partner because I'm not going to be able to combine my family life with this stress, these deadlines. Another issue is the lack of inclusion of diversity in the strategy of many law firms. This is like something that is nice to have, but is not part of the strategy. Salary gap, And all these factors, cultural factors in Spain, the female role is very much attached to is the one taking care of the family, of the children. So all these factors create what we call the glass ceiling. We spoke about it this morning. And there is also this personal or auto limit, our own ceiling. And I think there is also a media ceiling, because in my market, it is usually the male who is interviewed as expert in its particular professional field. So the media has also a point here. But I prefer to speak about accelerators. How can we change and transform this and change the picture that I have shown? First of all, we need to include diversity in the strategy. This is something that should be part of the strategy, not a complement, a priority. We need more visibility of the diversity business case, because at the end of the day, it provides profitability, innovation, it helps to retain or to engage the best talent. So it is important to measure the benefits. The millennials and this generation Zeta that we also spoke about and this morning will also help to promote the change, because they demand more diversity. They are behaving in the way of more family co-responsibility, that I think it's also very important. So, and media, as I said before, may help to change. In DLA, we are doing a lot of things to address these issues. We have this law program, Leadership Alliance for Women, with 3 pillars: mentoring, networking, and training. It is very important. We are implementing in Madrid flexible working, agile working. We ask our recruiters to provide a diverse pool of candidates, and we are considering gender issues in promotions, in career development, when we propose associates for attending academies. And finally, I wanted to refer to one very innovative measure that DLA took, that was the CEO Challenge, where we open consultation for all the professionals. You know, we have more than 4,000 lawyers, and we ask everybody in the firm, all the professionals, what do we want to do in a different way? What should we continue doing? And we got a lot of feedback about mental health, well-being, diversity, flexibility. So I think that was very good to ask for the view of our employees.
I want to shift a bit, and Pilar, as you know, we frequently receive survey requests from our clients concerning our diversity and inclusion efforts. And in the States, there's been a focus on pledges from GCs concerning a commitment to this work. I'd welcome your thoughts on what you feel the role of clients should be in advancing this work.
I think the client has a leading role here. The client may really accelerate the change that is needed, because at the end of the day, everything we do it for our clients. So if the clients take this very seriously and require from their law firms or legal services providers a real diversity and inclusion strategy, commitment, when you go on a pitch, it is very important that the clients see that you have a diverse team of lawyers, that you allow everybody to participate, and that everybody has a place on the table. So the purchasing power of the client, it's very important. It may really help to accelerate the changes.
You mind if I ask you a follow-up question from that? So in addition to there being a level of inclusion during the pitch meetings, do you feel, or what are your thoughts concerning also measuring, though, from the time of the pitch meetings to actual staffing and assignments, concerning who actually gets a share of the business?
Yeah, well, diversity should be there at all stages. The relationship, this is not something that you use as a selling topic, because that would be artificial.
Correct.
This is something that is real. We live it, and we demonstrate on day-to-day basis. Once again, it's leading by example. For me, this is a very important concept. And leading by example, starting by us, by the partners, that should have a leading role in embracing diversity.
One final question. So DLA Piper is a global law firm. globalization has required firms operating across cultures, candidly, really to evolve in order to be successful and to survive. Would you just mind sharing with us some practical tips that you think are vital and important concerning this culture shift based upon globalization?
I think as an organization, we have huge cultural diversity because we operate in more than 40 countries. So this is part of our NDA. One of the things I enjoy more in the LA is this cross-cultural interaction and the possibility of working with colleagues from other jurisdictions. Today I'm here in this wonderful Puerto Rico, but 2 weeks ago I was in Tel Aviv participating in a seminar speaking about harassment in the workplace and meeting technology clients. The following week I went to Oxford for another international employment law seminar. I was speaking about working hours, and I met colleagues from 22 jurisdictions and clients from all over the world. Next week, I will be in Madrid dealing with collective consultation with trade unions. I must say that this may be a more challenging cultural experience than traveling to the other side of the Atlantic. But this is great. So in terms of tips, I think you need to be very mindful of the other person and putting yourself always in the shoes of the other person. Maybe you are speaking English with someone that English is not his mother tongue, that's my case. Or if you need to ask someone for an urgent piece of advice, you need to be mindful of the time zone differences, the local festivities. So at the end of the day, it's a matter of respect, treating others the same way that you would like to be treated.
Absolutely. And on that note, I know I said that that was my final question, but Pilar, if I agree to come and meet you in Madrid, will you come on a tour with me across the U.S.?
Obviously. Looking forward to it and to coming back to Puerto Rico.
Absolutely.
I have already spoken too much, so now I'm going to make you some questions, Fenimore. Please tell us a little bit about your own personal journey. And was it your career goal to work in diversity and inclusion? I'm very curious about it.
Yeah. So full disclosure, I'm 45, and I would say when I was growing up, no one was saying that they wanted to grow up and be a chief diversity and inclusion officer. But when I was 14 years old, I had an opportunity to actually start my first summer job, and I'm a native of Louisiana, for our district attorney there. And I worked with a woman named Helen Castellini, who really inspired me to not only pursue going to law school, but she was really the foundation of what led to, I think, such a strong work ethic in this work. Helen was going through the advanced stages of lupus, and she was using a wheelchair. But she was the first one at the courthouse, the last one to leave. And I used to shadow her as she was a public defender, and as she was doing intake. And so I thought to myself, if someone who was going through their own personal health challenges had this much passion, this much commitment to the practice of law, as well as to the service of others, this was something that I wanted to pursue. Although, so it was then I decided that while I wanted to go and become an attorney, I didn't necessarily want to practice. And the way that sort of evolved was I didn't go to a top-tier ranked law school, but I certainly tried to get into what is known as the white shoe firms. And I think I sent out over 100+ resumes for a summer associate program and got rejected by all. And I held on to those, I think, for at least several years. But I went to work for a nonprofit civil rights organization known as the Rainbow Push Coalition in their New York office. And that's where actually I started to work in the area of doing research on the diversity and inclusion and equity practices of Fortune 100, 500, and 1,000 corporations. And that career, I started as an intern and worked my way to becoming the executive director of that organization, and then transitioned and shifted from the area of advocacy to corporate America. I went to work for this small company called Walmart. Some of you may have heard of it. And it was at a time when Walmart was actually launching its inaugural Office of Diversity and Inclusion. And it was at the same time that the company was defending itself against the Dukes litigation, which stood to be the largest class action lawsuit specific to the promotion of women in the United States. And so that was a very, I think, pivotal time in my career, because I spent time working not only in the area of diversity relations, but also employment analysis, and then managing ultimately the diversity goals program. I then also spent time in public service. So I worked for both mayors Michael Bloomberg and Bill de Blasio in New York, serving as the first chief diversity officer there, and then working for Johns Hopkins University as its inaugural chief diversity and inclusion officer. But my best role to date certainly is the role that I have with DLA Piper, because the way that it is structured, and I'll talk about that later, is, I think, something that allows us not only to advance this work for the firm, but I think to contribute to the profession and society as a whole. Now, some of you might say, with all those jobs, either, oh, he's very talented, or he can't keep a job. So hopefully you'll think maybe it is not the latter and the prior.
You have a wonderful role. I feel a bit jealous. So you choose to select Puerto Rico and this summit as the firm's national event for Hispanic Heritage Month. Why?
So both a professional and a personal reason. I'll start with the personal reason. I mentioned that I'm a native of Louisiana, so I certainly know firsthand the devastating effect of hurricanes. And the last time I was in Puerto Rico, I actually came for the opening of Hamilton. And I had seen Hamilton 3 times in New York, but I intentionally wanted to be here to see and observe Lin-Manuel Miranda here, and to be in that theater, and when he walked into the stage, and to be a part of that standing ovation that went on, I think, for about maybe close to 10 minutes. But to be a part of that, and to be in Puerto Rico, and to celebrate the excellence of that body of work. And the Hamilton, for me, represents, I think, in an artistic way, the strongest communication of the benefits, and you talked about the business case, the benefits of diversity and inclusion. And when you look at that piece of work, that body of work, and how it presents excellence, and who it was created by, for me, that's why from a personal level, I wanted to be here in Puerto Rico. From a professional level, even though I've been only with the firm just over 2 months, I feel like the team here in Puerto Rico is like my extended family. I would like to just pause so that and I don't know if this happened earlier today, but I want to make sure that we give appreciation to Miriam and to Nikos, but most importantly to Janine and Mariana for having the leadership to host this and convene this. Please, if you would just join me in appreciation. So those are the reasons why Puerto Rico.
You made a wonderful choice, I must say. And thank you very much for inviting me. That is a great pleasure. As a practitioner in this work for 20 years, what have you found to be most effective? And what have you found to be less effective?
So I'll start with the least effective and end on what I think most effective. And some of them actually mirror some of your comments. On the least effective, though, we have to work to shift in our way of discussing this work as if it's always from a deficit-based model. So as if it's always based upon a problem to solve, an issue to address, a gap to close. We have to, I think, talk about this work additionally in the space of it driving excellence, of it driving the best business outcomes, and of this work making us better. And I think that when we shift the messaging, then we also, in this sort of discussion and messaging about, well, it's a long journey to go. Oh, we're doing well, but we've got so much better to do. I think if you shift the messaging, then it accelerates, to your point, the work. I think what's also least effective is that there's a lot of discussion about various types of trainings. Trainings on unconscious bias, trainings on implicit bias. I'll talk a little bit, hopefully, if we have time, about one of my favorite areas to talk about is affinity-based bias. But training alone can't be the solution. I think also, too, as a Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer, as a practitioner, I always say transparently, I can't change anyone's values, systems, or beliefs. There's no training in the world, there's no type of assessment test that can change someone's personal values or beliefs. But what I can change and what I can influence and what I can impact are the behaviors in which we interact with each other in the workplace. When you create an awareness for individuals as to behaviors that may cause adverse employment actions and decisions, or you create an awareness about behaviors that create a toxicity in the workplace, and you work to advise people as to how they can course correct those behaviors, I think that that's most impactful. I think one other thing that's been least effective concerning this work is to focus on programmatic works, events, and do that solely, as opposed to approach this from your perspective as a true business strategy that's aligned with the overall business strategy of the organization. So those are the least effectives. I will say on the most effectives, again touching upon strategy, the strategy of this work has to be aligned with what's the growth strategy of your organization. That's where you show value, that's where you show relevance, and that's where you actually have sustainability. I think also, too, the efforts of this work from a best practice perspective, they have to at times be a bit disruptive. So that means that we have to hold up a mirror and look at our existing practices, either in how we promote and advance individuals, how we hire and select individuals, and we have to say, do we have any practices that are serving as barriers to entry for women and diverse individuals? And be real about that, as opposed to focusing so heavily on the programmatic side, which is important, but the self-reflection, the self-assessment, that's key and that's vital. I would say you have to use and establish metrics. You have to focus on key performance indicators, right? A key metric that I'm looking at concerning our recruitment efforts is that, okay, currently we know in the US there are roughly 1.3 million licensed attorneys in private practice. And so let's focus on the Hispanic Latino portion of that. So roughly, I think from the ABA, the 2018 numbers said that Hispanic and Latinos constitute 5% of that 1.3 million licensed attorneys here in the US. Now you could look at that figure and stop there, or you could go and look at the figure of the latest enrollment figures in law schools. The latest enrollment figures in law schools show that the strongest ethnic demographic group enrolled in law schools as of 2018 data is from where? From Latinos, right? 12%. So if I use metrics in a way that show me the future of the pipeline, and then again I go back to that mirror that we hold up and say, okay, what are we doing concerning our recruitment and outreach practices that may be serving as barriers to entry? I find that when you have an approach to this work, that's essentially a best practice, right? I think also too, we struggle to sort of rename this work and think of new names for it, but I think our guiding principles under this work have to be insightful, and they have to be innovative, and they have to be inclusive. There are spectrums beyond gender, race, and ethnicity to this work. We have to have I think, dedicated and concentrated focus on the broader spectrums and areas of diversity, individuals with disabilities, the LGBTQ community. We have to also focus on the fact that when we look at the multiple generations in the workforce, we talk heavily certainly about millennials, as we should, but we also have traditionalists and baby boomers who are still in the workforce, and we need to work to value, I think, everyone who's in the workforce. And so when I think about sort of best and effective practices, those are the areas. The one area that I will close on, and I think this is what DLA Piper has been focused on, is the commitment has to come from the top. You have to have commitment from your executive leadership. And at DLA, what we've done is we've restructured the diversity and inclusion national team, and we've redesigned the role. So this is the first time that the role has actually been structured as a chief. The role reports directly to Roger Meltzer, our global co-chair, as well as co-chair for the Americas. And I also provide reports to our policy committee. And so I think when you have that sort of model, as well as the direct involvement from the practice group leaders who are tasked with establishing their own strategic plans for diversity and inclusion, as well as reviewing their diversity metrics on a quarterly basis, to me, that's been most effective.
Yeah, I agree. What approach is the firm taking that you think will lead to the most impact or success, and what is the strategy? Can you explain it a little bit, and what is your personal vision about it?
So currently, right now, we're looking at 3 strategic pillars: workforce, workplace, and marketplace. As it pertains to workforce, that's really understanding, okay, what is the most relevant data to have before a practice group leader as she or he starts to think about how to recruit, retain, and develop their workforce across their practice groups. And so if you don't have, as a practice group leader or managing partner, basic insight as to, well, what's the total number of partners in our office? As I heard you quickly say, what's the demographics of the lawyers and associates? What is the rate of promotion of individuals? What's the rate in which people are separating, either voluntarily or involuntarily? How are we measuring or understanding whether we have talent that are top performing but aren't being utilized as it pertains to staffing and assignments? And if we aren't looking at that as baseline data, then that is a challenge, and that's one approach that we have been focused on now for going on to 2 years. The workplace. Anybody have any thoughts when I talk about workplace, what I'm talking about? I know there's students in here, so quiet. But climate and culture, sense of morale, right? So if the lawyers in the Madrid office can't say with a sense of intentionality to their friends or family members who are also lawyers who would have an interest in coming to DLA, if they can't say with a sense of intentionality, yes, come, it is a great place to be. Here's how I've been supported throughout my career. Then we aren't doing what's best. We aren't doing what's effective, right? If the climate is one in which people also feel that they have to assimilate to a dominant culture, as opposed to being a part of a culture that welcomes and embraces who they are authentically, then we aren't doing an effective job concerning the workplace environment and culture. The last piece is marketplace, and the focus on marketplace is really what are we doing to work collaboratively and engaging in sharing and knowledge with our clients concerning best practices concerning diversity and inclusion, as well as advancing the utilization of women and diverse attorneys in our matters. Also, too, in marketplace, I include community concerning what are we doing to contribute not just only to the legal profession, but to society as a whole. You mentioned also, too, the Mansfield Rule. So the Mansfield Rule, which is named after Arabella Mansfield, who was the first woman in the United States to become a lawyer. That's where we're focused on, from the metrics side, of actually making sure that 30% of our candidate slates for our partner promotions consist of women and diverse lawyers. And we have exceeded not only that percentage, but also our actual placements for the past 2 years. So that's a bit of the strategy and sort of insight. Sorry to be long-winded.
No. Last question. In areas of the world that are more homogeneous and don't really measure race, how is diversity and inclusion relevant? What should be the focus in those places?
So as we talked about, we're a global firm, and we're certainly located in areas where the populations are homogeneous, and race is not necessarily something that is an area that is of relevance in those locations. But there are other areas that I think play a role, such as privilege and access. We all can, I think, share our personal journeys of how we got to where we are. My first job was not because I had to fight heavily for it, but because my father was best friends with the district attorney in my hometown in Louisiana. I recognize and understand that I benefited from an aspect of privilege, but others don't have that same ability to have access. And so I think if you have a D&I program in an area globally, you have to focus on what role does privilege play. We also know that there, in addition to gender equity, there are equity issues specific to the LGBTQ community, and there are stereotypes concerning individuals with disabilities. And we know that we have to be focused on that. Also, too, while you might have a homogeneous population that exists, we also know that issues of colorism play a significant role in terms of how we view individuals who have different complexions than others across one homogeneous population. And that has had a historic impact on how individuals get selected for not only employment opportunities, but also get selected concerning the vital aspect of building relationships in the legal profession. So those are other areas of focus.
Thank you. We have quite a few questions.
Oh.
I don't know if we have time for all of them. If not, later on we can continue speaking. I'm going to take the first one. What changes have you seen in your years of experience from your first day until now? And have you seen an advancement? Yes, I have seen it. I started to practice law in the 90s. And in the 90s in Spain, the first female lawyer was appointed as partner of a major law firm. The first female judge was appointed in 2002 as a magistrate of the Supreme Court. And now we have some female lawyers in very relevant institutional positions. We have a chairwoman of the Consejo General de la Abogacía, that is the General Council for Lawyers. We also had, she's no longer in the position, but we had the first female dean of the Madrid Bar Association. That is the biggest bar association across Europe with 70,000 members. And in the law firms in particular, I have gone through this journey from being the only female partner in my law firm to the percentage now in Madrid is close to 20%. I think we still have a significant room for improvement, but we are there and we have a wonderful talent pipeline, so there will be more soon.
I think with certainty this card is for me because it asks what was my favorite song from Hamilton. And so my favorite song from Hamilton actually was the song that talks about being in the room. And I think that it has such a vital diversity and inclusion message because when we talk about access, access is not just about being invited to be a part of the group. Access and opportunity is about being actually in the room at the table where true decisions are made. And so that's my favorite song from Hamilton. Oh, thank you.
Fenimore, we have only 5 minutes to end,
minutes.
so if you can take a couple of additional questions.
Well, there's a second part to the question. So the second part asks, any advice for law students from underrepresented groups looking to break into the profession? And how best can they leverage their identity, leverage their diversity? So this is a very relevant question because I was a diverse law student. And for me, I found the best way to leverage leverage my identity was to make sure that I didn't forget my identity and that I very much was focused on advancing and paying it forward. So I became the president of the Black Law Students Association at my law school. But at the same time, I knew that it was important for me from an aspect of advancing and networking and building my career as a student that I also had to be in a place and space where there wasn't a lot of representation. And for me, that was in moot court. So I tried out for and competed for the Jessup International Moot Court team and surprisingly got on it. And then also spent time, though, advancing my way through moot court and actually becoming only the second African-American Chief Justice of the moot court program at my law school. And so for me, that helped me, not forgetting my identity, being proud of my identity, and paying it forward for other students like me, but at the same time forging a way to create a pipeline or to create a pathway for others to follow. And that's what I focused on.
Thank you, Fenimore. I think you can take another one.
Okay.
For me, listening to you is a learning experience, so you do the last question.
Let's see. Why don't we take you? You be the last question.
No, you.
No. I talk too much. Let's see. What elements of a diversity and inclusion program are must-haves? So I think that there are two elements that are must-haves to a diversity and inclusion program. A diversity and inclusion program has to be driven by two themes: accountability and transparency. On the accountability side, there has to be some sort of expectation as well as consequence if the leaders of not only a law firm, but the leaders of a corporation or the leaders of an organization or government, if there isn't some level of accountability concerning measuring how they are advancing this work, then you're going to continue to be sort of in this cycle of just doing programmatic work, as I talked about earlier. On the second element of transparency, sometimes you'll find that employers, they don't like showing numbers. You know, they don't like issuing annual reports concerning their progress. And I think that if you don't get into this practice and pattern of sharing data internally within your organization, as well as externally with your clients, with your stakeholders, with the communities that this work impacts, then you won't have a successful program. So those are the two key elements that I think are the must-haves: transparency and accountability.
Yeah, you have referred a couple of occasions to this measuring and the metrics. I think that is very important. I have heard somewhere that what cannot be counted doesn't count. So it's very important that follow-up and the metrics and the figures and the business case, as I said before. So thank you very much. Thank you to all of us, and I think we are on time. Thank you.